So one time I spoke to an older couple, a member of ours that at one point in time was attempting to do a larger transfer. An alert came to us that they were attempting to do this wire outside of the US to an individual in South Africa. When questioned about this, they started to, give half-truth answers, and they were coached by the fraudsters to say specific things to us in order to try to get the transfer to go through. Once they were questioned about it, though, the holes in the information in the story kind of started to fall through, and eventually they came clean and they advised us that, they had received a phone call from their granddaughter, who was traveling overseas and was currently in South Africa and, on some sort of either a business trip or mission or something to that effect. But once she was there was some sort of issue with taxes or some sort of crime that she was at that point in time subject to, or potentially going to prison or jail for. This, of course, concerned them, and they feared for their granddaughter's safety and everything like that. And they were advised by the fraudster, who was pretending to be the local authorities in South Africa, that they needed to send $25,000 to $30,000 or so to them directly in order to pay for their granddaughter to get out of the predicament that she was in so she could travel back to the States. At that time, the questioned and were saying but did you for sure hear your granddaughter? Was she on the line? And they did hear a recording of their granddaughter who through the fraudsters were able to manipulate through AI generation and produce this, scripted conversation in their granddaughter's voice. With that, as to them, it seemed, clear that this was, their granddaughter, and that the fraud was, this was a legitimate situation. At that point in time, I did advise them to reach out to the embassy in South Africa. Before they even got to the embassy part, though, they did get confirmation from their daughter that their granddaughter was fine within the States, hadn't been traveling at all recently. They were, at that point in time, able to go ahead and talk to her directly, and she advised them that, no, that's not me, I didn't call you, I'm not in South Africa. And the members then, called back and were like, yeah, this was fraud, actually. This person is trying to scam us and steal these funds and trying to convince us that this, emergency was occurring to them. And, luckily they were saved from, sending those funds out. But it is a, good reminder that, a lot of these fraudsters and things like that, when they are trying to convince you of the urgency or the severity of the situation, they're almost always lying and trying to use this sort of pending, emergency or doom to convince you through social engineering that, this is something you need to do now. There is no time. It has to be, done as quickly as possible, because the longer the scam goes on, the more likely they are to get caught. There's almost never a time when, something is so urgent that it can't take an extra day or two to, verify what is going on.